Hello everyone and welcome to the Planning Game Podcast, your weekly podcast for real world planning solutions to real world planning problems. My name's John McDermott from Town Planning Expert. Let's get right into it. Okay, so my guest today on the Planning Game is Simon Das of 978 Bridging. Morning, Simon, on this Sunday morning.
Morning, Jonathan.
How are you doing? You all right?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Are you well?
Yeah, I'm okay. Just come back from an amazing week in Croatia and fully refreshed to get back to the day job. So 978 Bridging, tell us a little bit about that.
So it's a commercial finance brokerage. We focus our energies on property, mainly and development finance. So the company's been going for about 18 months now. We're just staffing up at the minute. We're recruiting. So we've just, we're growing the team, growing the business. It's all very exciting, a little bit stressful. But yeah, really cutting our teeth now, getting some really nice deals on the table.
Nice. And what sort of size of deals do you look to bridge?
Well, the biggest we've looked at before now is around about 28 million. So there are some quite substantial ones. The majority of what we look at is probably 200 to 2 million, 200,000 up to about 2 million.
Wow, so
we've got some of these bigger ones.
Actually quite a nice big range.
Absolutely, yeah. We're looking at a 300-acre site at the moment that we're trying to bring out of administration for a client.
Mm-hmm.
Some nice chunky HMOs and some ground-up developments. Some of them smaller, sort of 4 or 5 houses. Others up around 20 to 30 houses as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, quite nice big range. And how long has 978 Bridging been going?
About 18 months. So before that, there was 978 Investment as well. So the brand's been going a bit longer. I was working with investors. I've been in property for a decade, and I was working with investors, helping them to secure decent property deals, and they always need money alongside that. So we sort of evolved into the finance market. We were actually looking at starting a lending business about 15 months ago.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time sort of fundraising, speaking to lots of different investors and financial institutions, and created a great network of alternative finance houses, basically. So that's where it all began and how we found ourselves here.
Well done. I mean, I guess that's the important of brand identity, though, isn't it? Because if you have a really strong brand that you start off with, you've been in property a decade. So if you have a really strong brand that you start off with, that brand can spin off into other areas and ventures carrying the same credentials, the same weight that it had when you were doing investment before you started doing bridging.
Yeah, absolutely. I think brand is massively important, especially in a crowded marketplace like property in general or finance brokerage. There's a lot of competition out there, and it's good to be able to define yourself and carry forward an image that people can connect to and people can understand. And I think that's something you guys do very well. And obviously, I'm involved with Andy and Lloyd and White Box and yourself, and branding for them is massive, and it's got them a very long way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something I'm very passionate about, and certainly something that a lot of property developers, I think, miss out is the branding piece, where they really do need to get themselves both a corporate identity and a personal branding identity in order to radiate out what they're about, and what they're trying to achieve. Okay. So the planning game, for those of you who haven't listened to the planning game before, it is an open conversation between me and Simon. Simon is freely able to ask me whatever he wants to in property. If I know the answer, great. If I don't, you'll get whilst I think about it. It is Sunday morning, and it is the Sunday morning immediately after my work's due. So after 8 gins and no hangover, I'm expecting a hangover to happen at about 11 o'clock. So we'll see how we get on, shall we?
Yeah, let's see if we can get done by 11 then.
Over to you.
For you.
Over to you, Simon. Let's see where this conversation takes us.
Okay, Jonathan. Well, thank you for your time this morning.
It's all right. It's part of the game.
Exercise. So I've got a couple of things that I'm thinking about at the minute in terms of development. I am new to property development. Property, I've refurbished properties, but conversions and ground up development is not something I've done prior to now. We're in legals on our first site. 4 houses we're looking at building, and we're in discussions on another. And then I've got a couple of questions about my current portfolio and how I might be able to that. But I think the burning questions for me are about quite a large site that we're in discussions on at the moment, and it's a listed site. It's great.
I love a listed building. Go on, carry on.
And I know you've got a listed building or two.
We have 2 now.
I thought you had a second one. Is there a
fourth? We bought a castle.
A castle, yeah. You're living a dream there, Jonathan.
Not really. we're just focusing on stuff that no one else is focusing on. But yeah, it's an interesting one. But go on. So you've got a listed building.
Yeah, I've got a listed building. It has gone through planning to take it so far. It's basically been approved for reinstatement of residential dwellings, basically.
Good.
That's as far as they went. So now we thought we were going in there to tidy them up, decorate and get them ready for market. But actually, when we looked into the planning, they'd not actually specified anything internally. The listing itself on the register is very brief.
Yeah, it will be.
It doesn't really mention anything. And one thing I'm intrigued by is that listings can be quite varied. Some have a lot more detail. Some have very specific things mentioned in them. But a lot of them just seem very, very brief. And I just want to understand, if it's listed, is everything internally and externally basically need to be preserved? These buildings are about 150 years old, so there's some bits in there that look like they're old, so they're not original, but do they need protecting?
Okay. So let's go back a step and just deal with what is a listed building and what does listing actually mean. So a listed building is a building that is protected nationally for its special architectural or historic interest. Okay. Now, when a building is listed, all of it is listed. There's no such thing as a frontage listing or a windows listing. That doesn't exist. All of the building is listed. So you have to make a judgment, or the council, moreover, has to make a judgment whether or not the works you're carrying out would preserve the special architectural or historic interest of the listed building. The judgment normally falls as to whether or not what you're trying to modify is an original feature of that building. Okay. So if you think about the 3 grades of listing, 2, 2-star and 3, a grade 2 listed building will typically have quite a lot of modifications already. It will have been altered from its original configuration or setting. It would have been altered internally. It might have some new windows added. It certainly won't have the original windows or doors. And normally that's where the old idea that, oh, only the outside is listed comes from.
Right.
The interior will have been absolutely blasted through, typically on a grade 2, right?
Yeah.
So that they'll be highly unlikely to find anything of importance left inside that building. If you move that up to 2-star, 2-star buildings are normally in good condition inside and out, albeit with some minor alterations. So, you're looking at internal staircases that are really good. You're looking at original windows and doors this time round with original openings. You might have some new openings that have been added, but otherwise you're looking at a building in reasonably good condition, and you are looking at an internal configuration that hasn't really altered. Move that up then to 1. Grade 1 listed buildings are in pristine condition, so they are as they were constructed. Yeah, they haven't been altered at all.
Right.
And that's where it's very difficult to make further alterations to them. What grading is your listed building? Is it 1 or 2?
It is grade 2.
Right. So the reason why you're listing, so again, this then comes down to what the listing says and why some listings differ from others. It does very much depend on how important that building is. So, for example, Raglan Gatehouse, which is a grade 2-star listed building in Plymouth that we've bought with Trevor Walker and Emma Morby, has got a very detailed listing entry, because it was, when the building was listed, in a very good condition. It was worthy of a 2-star. It had been allowed to degrade by the previous owners down effectively to a 2 status, because it now doesn't have any roof, it doesn't have any internal walls, they've all collapsed, the floors have all collapsed, right? So that building has degraded over time, but the listing is detailed because it was originally in very good condition. You then compare that to Pembroke Fort. Pembroke Fort, what I describe as the castle, is grade 2 listed and a scheduled ancient monument. The grade 2 listing is incredibly detailed because of the amount of history associated with that building. When they did the listing entry, they were able to throw a whole lot of history into that entry, even though it's 2. Sometimes buildings are just listed because they're the last example of that building in a street, and so it's listed, and the listing is invariably very vague. It will say something along the line of internals not inspected, because the internals are so far gone that there's no point mentioning them. So in terms of your listing, it's notionally very vague, and they've applied for planning permission and I hope listed building consent to convert back into dwellings. I haven't specified anything on the interior, and the reason why is because the interior is so far gone that there isn't actually anything left to preserve.
Well, that would be easier for us. We thought we'd go do everything properly as best as we knew how. So pretty much as soon as we visited the site, we invited the conservation officer down.
Good, sensible.
We've met him on site a couple of times. We've walked through the whole site. It's, you mentioned windows. There's about 100 windows, and there's only there's some of them that we think are original, and we've had discussions around that. But what he's really keen on trying to preserve or restore is the lath and plaster that's in there, which makes up a lot of ceilings, partition walls that don't really suit the building for modern living. So we're sort of in discussions with him around trying to open up some of the spaces.
Yeah, the judgment call the conservation officer has to make is a balance between the benefits associated with bringing this building back into life, because the rules are very clear. Once a listed building falls into a state of dereliction, it is the duty of the council to find any alternative that will bring it back into life.
Right. Okay.
Okay. versus the desirability of preserving a feature of the building, like, for example, the lath and plaster. What you have to do in those circumstances is try and make clear to the conservation officer that if the conversion is too expensive for you, i.e. too expensive for anyone, then it won't happen. And their primary duty, which is to ensure an economic life for a listed building, would fail.
Okay, that is roughly what we were thinking. Ultimately, if we can make the amendments that we're talking about, these properties will become a lot more saleable and valuable, so we can afford to spend more money on preserving the rest of the features in there.
Yeah. So what you're essentially talking about and talking to him about is something called enabling development. Now, enabling development is there to allow certain features or certain works to the building in order to enable the preservation of others. Right?
Okay.
We're using that argument down at Raglan, where we're saying to the council quite clearly, we need you to allow development on the road. We need some housing on the road, on the non-listed part of the site, in order for us to be able to develop the listed part.
Right.
Because in order to get the deal to stack, in order to get the financials to work, we need all of it. And just having part of it doesn't stack, it doesn't work. You'll be left with a building in a derelict state because it won't happen. And that's the judgment, that the argument that needs to be presented very clearly. In your case, you need to be very clear with this conservation officer and say, look, we need these works in order for you to get what you want. If we don't get these works, then you won't get what you want. Yeah, you want to keep the lath and plaster, we can do that for you. But in order to do that, we need to remove this partition, and this partition.
Okay.
Now, what he might do is a compromise solution for you. So what he might do is say, okay, but what I want you to do is leave a reveal edge of where the partition was as a nod to where the historic wall was. So that, so he might come up with that compromise. You know how you sometimes see archways in the middle of rooms? Yeah. That's normally where you're leaving that nod to where the structure of an old wall actually was, and you're giving the option at a later time to essentially put the wall back. Yeah, because if you leave the structure there, then you can reinstate at any point. That might be a good compromise solution to get the openness you desire, and put an interest feature in that the council might desire in order to make the deal work.
Okay, great. Yeah, that makes sense. So it is a negotiation.
Absolutely.
It's not a case of, you know, we just have to protect absolutely every feature, and if it becomes unsustainable, then, you know, it's just unsustainable.
It is a negotiation. Yeah. It is absolutely a negotiation. They've even carried out this negotiation on the Grade 1 listed Houses of Commons, at the Palace of Westminster, where English heritage are involved, and the Crown Estate has been negotiating with English heritage on the features of the building that must be preserved and the features of the building that are less important, that can be restored in a different way in order to allow there enough budget to be able to restore the other parts.
Right, okay.
So it isn't a dictatorship from the conservation officer. Treat it as any other negotiation.
Okay. Okay. So this could take time.
Could take a little bit of time, yeah.
Take a little bit of time. We need to secure the site as soon as we can.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, you know, how do we structure the deal so that we have long enough to get to where we need to be and know that we can Did it run?
So it already has planning permission, yeah?
It has planning permission for conversion into residential dwellings.
Okay. So it's got that consent already. So have
Yeah.
you structured your existing deal? Is that structured based on you being able to execute the planning permission you have in hand?
It's the offers that we've made are um, based on us getting the majority of what we need in that development, if that makes sense. So we've,
Yeah, it does.
best case scenario, pared it back a little bit and made an offer accordingly. We're still in negotiations on this site. Nothing's, no.
Okay. I mean, one of the things I would do, Simon, is I would structure, if you're in negotiations on the offer, I would try and bring those negotiations to a close in a very regimented way. And what I would say is put in a structured offer. Now, what I mean by that is this. Andy and Lloyd talk about this a lot on PDS. They put in offers based on multiple scenarios. So your offer number one, your route one would be the application that you have, which is effectively the banker. That is the one that you've got. So what the value to you of that application would be, okay? And you do that as an uncon offer. So that is what you're going to buy the building for. Now that might be significantly less than what they want, but that is what the building's worth, okay, based on your calculations. You then do a sequence of structured conditional offers, right? Based on the scenario A, that you get essentially a pared back version of what you want. And for that, you can offer this. And scenario B, you get everything you want and you can offer this for it. Yeah, it does mean a little bit more work in the offer, but what you're effectively doing is being very honest with your vendor and saying, look, your estate agent's figures are a bit out of whack. This is what a developer can offer you for this building. Okay. But if you are so minded, we can also offer you 2 subject to planning offers. And those subject to planning offers would be based on this value and this value if we achieve this or this.
Sure.
So you can structure them in that way. The thing that you might then seek to do is get all that nice and tied up in a decent contract or a decent option, so that it's all nice and tied in. They can't renege out of the deal, and then you can proceed with whatever purchase route you wish to. But you're giving the vendor some certainty and hope that at very least you're going to do it on the unconditional.
Yeah.
But the unconditional is based on what they got planning permission.
Okay, yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does, yeah, absolutely. We're meeting with them this week, so
I think when honesty from my point of view is always the best policy. The values that are put on sites by agents are often difficult to get to when you're a developer. They're easy to get to if you still own the site. Yeah. Very easy to do because you're not having to go through the purchase and you're not having to go through the finance cost of buying that site. If that vendor were to develop the site that they have, in hand, then they could easily get to the profit figures that their estate agent is telling them.
Sure.
The difficulty comes when you're trying to buy in a site.
Yeah.
And the values then fall completely out of bed because that figure doesn't take into account finance cost for build, finance cost for purchase, legals, another planning application, anything else like that. It just doesn't come in. So the reality there is, I think if you're honest with a vendor and say, look, these are my maths, have a look through them. I can get you to this. This is based on X, Y, and Z. but if we get this planning permission, I can get you here. And if we get this planning permission, I can get you here. And here is my package of offers where we've got an unconditional, we've got two conditionals. You can accept all of them, you can decline all of them, but you're being honest.
Sure.
I think that'll put you in a much better position.
Okay.
But absolutely done the right thing by going and talking to the conservation officer and
Yes.
starting that dialogue. Absolutely the right thing.
That's good.
I'm meeting with my conservation officer and my planning officer in Plymouth on Thursday. I'm having a 2-hour meeting with them. We're going down to site. We're going to talk through all of the issues and options. Have a proper planning to planner chat. Yeah. Because when you're dealing with listed buildings, the right policy is not to fight, it is to work with and to get the building sorted out, because you're only borrowing the building for a short period of time. It's the country's building, you're just borrowing it.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's good. That's good, because we did wonder what we'd done when he started pointing out every little thing that he wanted saving.
But that's fine. It's better to know now
Yeah.
than to be, because there are people who go into listed buildings with a sledgehammer.
Yeah.
Right? And they're the ones who end up in front of, because it is a criminal offence to cause criminal damage to a listed building of any grade. So they're the ones that end up in front of the magistrate with a 20 grand fine and a prison sentence, or however much the fine is. The minimum is a 20 grand fine now.
Yeah.
So it's not worth messing around. You're right, absolutely right to do things properly.
Good. Excellent.
Cool. We've covered quite a lot there. What was the other thing you wanted to talk about?
Well, the other thing, so I've got a little portfolio in Morecambe, sunny I am now.
Sunny Morecambe.
Yeah. And the area's on the up. There's a lot of private investment going on. There's planning for a new Eden project, a huge tourist attraction and things. I own a few Victorian terrace properties.
Yeah.
And they all have basements. And I'm just wondering about permitted development in residential property. It might be worth, in the not too distant future, starting to make some of those basements into small flats or extra living accommodation one way or another.
What's the current use of those properties? What are you currently using them for?
They are just buy-to-lets and small HMOs.
Okay, so let's deal with the buy-to-lets first. So if they're just family homes or holiday homes, absolutely, it's worthwhile going down into those basements and getting those basements converted. If they're existing basements, you have permitted development rights available to you to make them habitable. You can do certain works in order to put windows in, etc., on the rear. You have to be a little bit careful there, but there are provisions available to you. So in terms of actually making the basement work and work for you, absolutely. Same with small HMOs. If you're on a 5-person HMO and the basement would give you a 6th, then absolutely do that. You don't need planning permission to go from a 5 to a 6-person HMO. You'd only need planning permission to go from a 6 to a 7. So the viability of actually doing this work is quite high. A lot of my clients down south do the reverse, so they actually go up into their roofs and create massive great roof extensions, and take 6-bed HMOs up to 8-bed, 9-bed, and 10-bed HMOs by going up into their roofs. So there are multiple mechanisms available to you to enhance the value of a property by using your PD allowances. All you have to be wary of is when you're going to transgress a limit. So, for example, you can't convert a house into flats without planning permission. So you would need planning permission for that, and the flats that you create would have to meet the national standards. Equally, you can't go from a 6-bed to a 7-bed HMO without planning permission either. So you can form the bedrooms, but as long you need to get your planning permission on first use.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
But absolutely viable, and it's something I've got a lot of clients doing at the moment. In planning, we call it nesting. So that they are looking at their existing portfolio and seeing if that can work more efficiently for them.
Yeah.
Um, is there any big problem up in Morecambe with serviced accommodation, or hasn't that appeared in Morecambe yet?
There's not a lot of it. There's little bits. People are testing the water at the moment.
Hmm.
Obviously, if this big tourist attraction takes off, it will.
Yes. Then
It,
suddenly it'll all kick in. I mean,
yeah,
that can be a very good way of, especially if Morecambe has a decent tourist season, and that can be a very, very good way of shifting one of your standard buy-to-let family homes across, is to go family serviced accommodation, actually rent it as a holiday home for the summer months. You just have to make sure the quality is, and there you're just looking at refurbs. So you're just looking at a really decent refurb, getting the quality of the accommodation up to snuff internally,
yeah,
and outmatching your marketplace so that you are the best of the bunch when it comes to advertising it on Spare Room or Airbnb or wherever you choose to advertise it, and do it that way. To give you an example of that, we as a development strategy are looking with partners at holiday homes in Cornwall. I've got a particular love for the county, but here's the thing. The moment a property in Cornwall crosses the 3 bedroom boundary, yeah, as long as it's within a mile of the coastline and it's 3 or more bedrooms, the value per week for a 3 bedroom property in the summer season in Cornwall is £1,000 a week.
well,
And there aren't enough holiday homes.
right,
So, and to give you an idea, I go to Cornwall every year with my family, right? It's my family holiday. In order to get the holiday home we want in the week that we want it, we must book a year in advance
well, right, okay,
because there is no um, huge market. There is no structured marketplace down there, and they are running out of holiday homes year on year. So I think this is an untapped market, and certainly it's something that me and my development partners are going to be looking at in the very near future. Is okay, how can we capitalize upon that? And weirdly, what we're looking at is we're going to look at hotels.
right, okay,
Because if we convert a hotel into an apart hotel,
yeah,
yeah, a hotel filled with 3 bedroom apartments,
yeah,
then we don't need planning permission for that
right, okay,
because it's the same use class, it's just internal works. And then we can rent that to holidaymakers like any other hotel. And it's then just a numbers game. How many
interesting,
units can we generate out of a building? How and how long the season is in Cornwall? And the season is between April and October,
right,
so it's a 9 month season.
yeah, interesting,
And we're actually looking at the more underrated towns as well. So
right,
Morecambe is coming up. You're right, but it's an underrated town. We're
yeah,
looking at Newquay. Newquay is seriously underdeveloped at the moment.
right,
It's an old Victorian seaside town with
yeah,
shit all in it, right? And for those who have not listened to the Planning Game podcast, I do swear liberally. Live with it. This is an adult podcast. So the there's nothing going on in Newquay apart from all of the big retirement homes, building retirement homes everywhere,
yeah,
and all of the big sort of mass market chains building big housing estates on the edge of the town.
right,
And they're doing that because they can see what's going on. It's the same reason that we're investing in Plymouth. Plymouth, maritime city, but hasn't seen proper investment in the better part of 30 years
yeah,
and is showing its age But now the major housing developers, like for example Galliford's, are building a multi-million-pound harbourside development right in the middle of the town,
Right.
and opposite the Continental Ferry Port. So it's not exactly the nice part of town either. It's opposite a ferry port. But they've invested millions upon millions of pounds in this development that's a multi-million-pound GDV.
Wow.
It's those kind of areas
Telling, yeah.
that tell, or those kind of things that tell you that something's happening in this town. Something's occurring, and what you want to be is use the old Clive Sinclair adage of you want to be first to market. And if you can't be first to market, you damn well better be second.
Yeah. Yeah. Feels a bit like that around here at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, the guys from Fabric learnt early on that Blackpool is going through the same renaissance.
Yeah.
And their efforts in Blackpool are assisting the property market in Blackpool.
Yeah. Yeah, they're making a cracking job of it.
So, you know, why can't you do that? I always ask the question, why can't you? So
Yeah.
if Morecambe is another one of these towns like Plymouth, like Newquay, like Blackpool, like Eastbourne, like Lewes, like Folkestone, where there hasn't been the investment because everyone's gone, it's a geriatric farm, or it's just Morecambe, it's Lancashire. Why would we ever want to go up to Lancashire? And then suddenly something is happening. Then that should be a marker for everyone in that town to say, hang on a minute, it's changing. Something's occurring. And because something's occurring, maybe we should get on this now before it's too late.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been watching it for the past few years, and obviously I've bought a few properties around here, but certainly a wave that I want to ride as all this kicks in. All this,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. I think we covered quite a lot, Simon. Is there anything else you want to cover?
No, that was it really from my notes. Thank you.
That's a pleasure. So if people want you for bridging finance, how do they get hold of you? Go on, give yourself the whopping great plug.
Thank you, Jonathan. Well, we're on social media. Search for 978 Bridging. Mail at 978bridging.com comes to both of us. So me or Hamad will pick up those emails. And yeah, we're keen to sort you out with bridging and development finance mainly, and we'll also help you with the exits if you're retaining your properties. So property finance for property developers.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Simon, for joining me on the Planning Game. I hope everyone at home got a lot out of that as well. It's a really good discussion on listed buildings. Join me next time on the Planning Game, where hopefully we'll have some more lovely property developers talking about their journeys and what they're doing and how planning can assist them. I've been John McDermott. He's been Simon Das. Thank you very, very much.
Thanks.